On Christmas Eve, sitting right in front of my daughter's in-laws, I officially became the family burden. We were gathered in Brooke and Preston's formal dining room, surrounded by expensive seafood platters and vintage wine, a spread that, ironically, I had secretly helped pay for. The mood was warm and festive, right up until Margaret Preston's mother casually brought up how tough the economy was getting. That was when Brooke let out a heavy sigh, looked at me from across the table, and delivered the line that changed everything. "Mom, seriously, you have to stop asking us for money," she snapped, using a tone dripping with fake patience. "It's embarrassing. Preston and I work incredibly hard, and we just can't keep supporting you forever." The table went dead silent. Margaret nodded slowly, shooting me a look of profound pity. Preston cleared his throat, feigning awkwardness. For 3 years, I had been the one quietly plugging the holes in Brooke's sinking financial ship. I paid off her maxed-out credit cards, caught up her past-due car loans, and even covered the tuition for my grandkids' private school. Every month, I'd get a frantic text, "Mom, just this once. Preston can't find out." And every month, I quietly transferred the funds. I had never asked her for a single dime. The humiliation burned in the back of my throat, but I didn't cry. I didn't argue either. I just looked at her perfectly contoured face and her silk designer dress, and I smiled. "You're right, Brooke." I replied, my voice soft and steady. "I am so sorry." Underneath the table, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I had 4 automatic transfers scheduled to clear over the next few days: her gold card, a personal loan, her premium health insurance, and the country club dues. I tapped the screen. Cancel, 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 cancel. In less than 60 seconds, $40,000 of annual financial support vanished into thin air. I slipped the phone back into my purse and took a calm sip of my water. 15 seconds later, Brooke's phone, resting right next to her dinner plate, lit up. It buzzed once, then again, and again. Dinner was just getting started. Brooke's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She had set up her bank alerts to notify her of any changes to her shared accounts, and the auto-pays I was secretly covering from the shadows. I watched her glance down at the screen. Her brow furrowed instantly. The hand holding her crystal wine glass started to tremble just a little. The phone lit up with yet another cancellation alert, and the color completely drained from her face. "Everything okay, babe?" Preston asked, noticing she had gone completely rigid. "No, it's nothing, just some bank spam." She stammered aggressively, flipping the phone face down on the table, but her eyes instantly darted to me. There was raw panic in them. The whole successful self-made daughter speech she had just given to her in-laws was hanging by a thread. I didn't break my gaze. I just went back to cutting a piece of turkey with absolute tranquility, chewing slowly. The conversation around the table moved on. Margaret started talking about her upcoming vacation to Europe, while Brooke sat completely frozen, her breathing shallow and uneven. Whenever she tried to jump into the conversation, her voice came out high-pitched and strained. When dessert was finally served, I wiped my mouth with my linen napkin and stood up slowly. "It's been a lovely evening," I announced, looking toward my daughter's in-laws. "But I'm exhausted. I think I'm going to head home." "You're leaving already, Mom." Brooke nearly leaped out of her chair, rushing over to me. "Wait, let me walk you to the door. We need to talk." "That's okay. I know the way out," I replied. I grabbed my coat from the rack. She trailed right behind me into the hallway, safely out of earshot from her husband. "What did you do?" she hissed, grabbing my arm. "Why is the bank saying you canceled the payments?" I gently, but firmly, pulled my arm out of her grip. "You asked me to stop depending on you, Brooke. I'm just taking your advice. Merry Christmas." I opened the front door and stepped out into the freezing winter air, leaving her standing there, pale as a ghost. The next morning was unusually quiet. I brewed my coffee black just the way I like it and sat out on the small balcony of my condo. The crisp air cleared my head. I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. Instead, there was a strange, undeniable lightness in my chest. My phone, which I had left on Do Not Disturb all night, showed 22 missed calls and over 40 text messages from Brooke. They ranged from sheer rage to absolute begging. "You can't do this to me. Preston is going to see the statements tomorrow. Mom, please, we need to talk." I didn't open a single one. Instead, I answered a call from Garrett, my youngest son. He lived a couple of hours away and hadn't been able to make it to the Christmas Eve dinner. "Hey, Mom," he said, sounding entirely confused. "Brooke just called me sobbing hysterically. She said you got offended over some joke at dinner and cut off her credit lines. What the hell happened?" I took a sip of my coffee. "It wasn't a joke, Garrett. She humiliated me in front of her husband's family. She told them I was leeching off of her." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. "She said, what?" His tone instantly shifted from confused to furious. "But you pay for half her life." Was Preston's mom there? Everyone was there, so I decided to give her exactly what she asked for. "The bank of Mom is officially closed." "Good for you, Mom," Garrett said, without skipping a beat. "It's about time. If you need me to talk to her, just say the word." "No need. I've got it handled," I assured him. I hung up the phone feeling deeply validated. Garrett had always been cut from a different cloth than his sister. He worked at an auto repair shop, lived strictly within his means, and never asked me for a handout. As I was finishing my breakfast, the doorbell rang with frantic urgency. 2 quick knocks followed by a long, heavy one. Only one person knocked like that. The storm had arrived at my front door. I opened the door. Brooke was standing in the hallway, her winter coat misbuttoned and dark bags under her eyes, betraying a completely sleepless night. She didn't wait to be invited in. She shoved past me with heavy steps and planted herself in the middle of my living room. "You need to turn the auto pay back on right now," she demanded, crossing her arms. "The gold card payment hits tomorrow. If it bounces, Preston is going to see the insufficient funds alert." I walked over to the kitchen and calmly set my mug in the sink. "That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem," I replied. "You can't just leave me out to dry over one stupid comment," she yelled, completely losing her composure. "I was under a ton of pressure yesterday. Margaret judges my every move, and I just wanted to look good in front of her." I walked over to my desk, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a thick blue folder. I had put it together a few weeks prior just to get my own affairs in order. I held it out to her. "Open it." Brooke frowned but took the folder. Her eyes skimmed over the printed spreadsheets. Every wire transfer, every credit card payment, every private school invoice. Everything was perfectly itemized by date and category for the last 36 months. At the bottom of the last page, the grand total sat there in bold text, $50,000. "You've been living a lie, Brooke," I said quietly. "You've been faking a lifestyle you can't afford by draining my savings. And yesterday, to protect that lie, you used me as a doormat." "I just wanted them to respect me," she whispered, staring blankly at the numbers. "I deserve respect too. I am done funding your little theater production. I highly suggest you sit down with your husband and tell him the truth before the bank does it for you. If I tell him this, he'll file for divorce." She sobbed, letting the blue folder drop to the hardwood floor. "Then you'd better start updating your resume," I said, pointing toward the door. "Please leave. I'd like to enjoy the rest of my morning in peace." It didn't take long for the fallout to reach me. 2 days after Brooke's visit, my phone lit up with Preston's name. Up until that moment, my son-in-law barely spoke to me, usually limiting our interactions to 5-second cordial greetings at family events. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "Diane, good afternoon." He started using a condescending tone that instantly made my blood run cold. "Brooke told me about the little misunderstanding you two had." "There is no misunderstanding, Preston." "Well, she's pretty upset." He kept going, completely ignoring what I said. "She mentioned you promised to help her clear up a few small debts she was carrying, and now because you're throwing a tantrum, you're hanging her out to dry. You know stress isn't good for someone your age. I'll take care of those debts, but I really expected more maturity from you." I pinched the bridge of my nose. Brooke had lied again. She had downplayed the massive financial hole and painted me as an emotionally unstable old woman breaking promises on a whim. "Small debts?" I asked, keeping my voice deadpan. "Preston, have you actually looked at the gold card statements? Or your kids' school tuition invoices?" "Brooke manages the tuition account. I transfer my half to her every single month." "You might want to double-check where your half is actually going," I suggested. "And while you're at it, figure out who's been paying for your family's premium health insurance this past year. I'm going to email a document to the address I have on file for you. Take a good look at it, and then you can decide if the problem here is my lack of maturity." "What document, Diane?" "I don't understand what—" "Have a wonderful afternoon, Preston." I hung up. I opened my laptop and emailed him a PDF of the exact same spreadsheet I had handed Brooke. I didn't type a single word in the body of the email. I just attached the file. If he wanted to play the condescending, protective husband, he was going to have to do it with all the cards on the table. The kitchen clock struck 5. It was time to take care of a much more urgent errand. While Preston was busy processing the financial bomb I'd just dropped in his inbox, I threw on my coat and headed downstairs. There was one loose end I couldn't afford to ignore. A couple of years ago, I had to undergo a minor knee surgery. At the time, I gave Brooke a spare key to my condo and added her as an authorized user on a secondary emergency savings account, just in case something went sideways and I couldn't get to the bank. The surgery came and went, but she conveniently kept the key and the account access. I walked down to the neighborhood hardware store and hired a locksmith to rekey my front door that very afternoon. From there, I took the bus straight to my local bank branch. I sat down across from my account manager, a nice guy who had known me for years. "I need to withdraw the entire balance from this joint account and move it into a brand new one solely in my name," I told him, handing over my driver's license. "I also need to completely revoke Brooke's authorization on any of my other accounts or cards." The whole process took barely 20 minutes. I walked out of the bank with a shiny new debit card and the absolute peace of mind that there was an ironclad wall around my life savings. Later that night, an automated push notification popped up on my phone. Someone had attempted a $400 charge at a high-end clothing boutique using the debit card tied to the old emergency account. The status was spelled out in bold red letters: "Transaction declined. Account closed." Half an hour later, I heard a metallic scratching noise at my front door. Someone was trying to force a key into a lock that wouldn't turn. The metal jingled against the wood a few times, followed by a frustrated, heavy thud against the door frame. I quietly walked over and looked through the peephole. Brooke was standing out in the hall, eyes red and puffy, holding a shopping bag. She was finally realizing that she no longer had VIP access to my life, my home, or my wallet. My phone ringing woke me up the next morning. This time, it wasn't Brooke, but Margaret, the mother-in-law, who had looked at me with such overwhelming pity on Christmas Eve. I swiped decline. I had absolutely zero intention of joining the circus that had undoubtedly erupted in their household. Garrett called me around noon to give me the full recap. His voice was equal parts stunned and vindicated. "The whole house of cards came down, Mom," he told me while I was watering my houseplants. "Preston called me this morning looking for Brooke. Apparently he saw that email you sent. He ran his own numbers, put the pieces together, and went absolutely nuclear." "I figured as much," I said, plucking a dead leaf off my pothos. "Where did she go?" "To Margaret's house. And get this, Margaret went off on her too. Preston's whole family genuinely thought you were broke and that they were keeping you afloat. When Preston showed them the spreadsheets proving it was the other way around, Margaret practically fainted." A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I don't usually take pleasure in other people's misery, but the poetic justice was hard to ignore. Brooke had inflated her ego at the direct expense of my reputation, and now the very same snobs she was trying to impress were looking down on her. "Preston said he's shredding all her authorized credit cards and told her she has to get a job to pay back what she siphoned out of their joint accounts," Garrett added. "Lies are expensive to maintain," I noted. "Are you doing okay, Mom? You don't feel bad for her." I stared out the window at the busy street below. "I feel sad that my daughter bases her entire worth on things with designer price tags, Garrett. But no, I don't feel bad. I got my peace back, and that's worth more than any luxury handbag." That afternoon, I treated myself to a slice of cake at my favorite bakery. There was a lot to celebrate. It took 4 days of dead silence before the storm rolled back in this time, without the fury, just pathetic, gut-wrenching sobbing. Brooke was waiting for me in the lobby of my building. She wasn't wearing an ounce of makeup, her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing baggy gray sweatpants, a look that would have been completely unimaginable for her just a week ago. "Mom!" she wailed the second she saw me walking in with my groceries. I sighed. I wasn't about to cause a scene in the lobby. "Come on up," I said, unlocking the main door. She followed me up to the condo in silence. I pointed to a stool at the kitchen island while I put away the milk and oranges. She slumped into the chair, burying her face in her hands. "Preston took my cards," she cried, her voice cracking. "He gives me a cash allowance for groceries now. He treats me like a criminal, and Margaret won't even look at me." I finished putting away the groceries, washed my hands, and poured her a glass of water. I set it down in front of her. "He's treating you based on what you've shown him, Brooke," I said, sitting across from her. "You broke the trust in your marriage. I need you to talk to him." She looked up, desperate. "Tell him that you forced me to take the money. Tell him it was a mutual arrangement. If it comes from you, he'll back off." I stared at her. Even at rock bottom, she couldn't take accountability. She was still trying to use me as a shield, a convenient scapegoat for her own mess. "I'm not lying for you. You're an adult. The choices you make have consequences. I can't live like this counting pennies at the grocery store. I'm not like you, and that right there is exactly the problem." I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "You aren't like me because I actually know how to live with what I have. And now you're going to have to learn how to do the same." I pointed to the front door, and this time it was final. The following months brought a massive shift in my day-to-day life. Without the constant financial hemorrhage of funding Brooke's lifestyle, my bank account started growing, at a rate I hadn't seen since my husband passed away. I calculated that I had an extra $2,000 in my budget every single month. My money earned and saved over a lifetime of hard work. I decided it was time to invest in myself for once. I hired contractors and completely gutted my outdated kitchen. I put in modern subway tile, sleek quartz countertops, and brand new stainless steel appliances. Every morning when I brewed my coffee, I looked around and felt a profound sense of satisfaction. That summer, Garrett invited me to spend a week with his family at the beach. I insisted on renting us a gorgeous beach house right on the coast. "Mom, you really don't have to do this," he told me as we walked along the shoreline at sunset. "I want to do it," I smiled. For the first time in a very long time, my money is going exactly where my heart wants it to go, without any guilt trips or secrets. As for Brooke, I only heard updates through the grapevine. Garrett told me she eventually had to take a retail job at the mall. She was working for minimum wage, spending her weekends folding sweaters under the supervision of a manager 10 years younger than her. Preston was now managing every cent that came in and out of their household with an iron fist. They didn't get divorced, but the power dynamic had permanently shifted. Brooke completely stopped posting photos of fancy dinners and designer bags. Her social media went radio silent. I didn't hold any lingering resentment, nor did I take any malicious joy in her struggles. Simply put, she was no longer my problem. My energy went into my morning walks, my pottery classes, and quiet dinners in my beautiful new kitchen. Before long, December rolled around again, bringing the ultimate litmus test. Exactly 1 year after that infamous dinner, we gathered for the holidays again. This time, Christmas Eve was hosted at Garrett's house, a much cozier, warmer environment with zero pretension. I arrived early, helped my daughter-in-law prep the appetizers, and settled into the sofa with a glass of red wine. Brooke and Preston walked in a little while later. Brooke was wearing standard blue jeans and a plain navy sweater. There was no sign of expensive fur coats or flashy jewelry. Her whole posture was different shoulders, slightly hunched eyes, cautious. When she saw me, she hesitated for a split second before walking over. "Hi, Mom," she murmured, avoiding direct eye contact. "Hello, Brooke," I replied with a neutral tone, taking a sip of my wine. There were no warm hugs and no tearful apologies. I didn't expect them, and honestly, I didn't need them. Throughout dinner, she mostly kept to herself, ate quietly, and helped clear the plates. Preston, however, cornered me in the kitchen when I went to drop off some empty glasses. "Diane," he said quietly, "I just wanted to say thank you. It was a really rough year, but you forced an issue that desperately needed to be fixed. She's maturing. Slowly, but surely." I gave a polite nod. "I hope you two find your balance, Preston." I left it at that. It wasn't my job to fix their marriage or be my daughter's therapist. When the night wrapped up and I drove back to my condo, I flipped on the lights in my newly renovated kitchen and kicked off my shoes. Out of pure habit, I opened my banking app. My savings were secure, steadily compounding month after month. There were no hidden debts and no scheduled transfers to someone else's credit cards. I had lost the title of the compliant, endlessly sacrificing mother, but in exchange, I had gained something infinitely more valuable: total control over my own life. And that is without a doubt the best way to live. Sometimes true peace of mind starts the exact second you decide to stop funding your own disrespect. For years, I genuinely believed that being a good mother meant cushioning every single one of my daughter's falls, regardless of the quiet, grinding toll it took on me. But I learned the hard way that setting boundaries isn't an act of selfishness or revenge. It's simply taking back the steering wheel of your own life. At the end of the day, you realize you can't buy someone's maturity or their respect. The only thing we truly control is what we are willing to tolerate. And finding my own breaking point didn't cost me my family. It just handed me back the freedom I didn't even know I had lost.